Welcome to the Balls Talk Sports NFL podcast. It may be 2025 on the calendar, but it's still 2024 on the TV because we've got one more week of regular season football. How long will we rattle on about games that barely matter? You better stay tuned to find out. Victor, I want to start the new year off right. Are you ready to get kinky?
I'm ready to get kinky. It's 2025, but we still got a lot of football to play before this year is over. It's 2025 in the regular people's year, but we all know that the real start of 2025 is the day after the Super Bowl when draft season officially starts and we kick off the new year. So they'll be celebrating 2025. We still got business to finish in this year. Let's get kinky.
You know what they say. Worst things first. That holds true here because if you're a Browns fan, first of all, I'm so sorry. And second, this game is going to be ass for you. The 3-13 Browns head to Baltimore to take on the 11-5 Ravens. Victor, take a guess at what the spread is for this game.
I mean, I have a hard time believing it's going to be higher than the Baltimore-New York spread, which was like 16, 17. But honestly, the Browns lost by 17 to Tyler Huntley last week. So I'd guess like 17.5.
Oh, it's minus 20.
Oh my God. Have you ever seen a line that big? I don't think so.
No, it's by far the largest one of the year. Those are like college football type of numbers. This is like Clemson versus East Carolina.
And to think, we were laughing about Lions Titans minus 14 earlier in the year, and it's minus 20 for Baltimore. Oh my God.
Just to make things all the more dire for the Browns, not only is this a revenge game for the Ravens, but they also got to play hard and clinch the AFC North with a victory. Yep. The Browns are making a QB change. Looks like they're going to be running Bailey Zappi out there. He's not going to have David Njoku. They're down Jerome Ford as well. I believe he's headed to IR. The defense is beat up to hell. I truly don't think there's a path to victory. Maybe we throw that around too much. I remember us saying that before the Giants beat the Seahawks. Here, I just don't see it. The Ravens are easily going to out-talent the Browns offensively, and benching DTR isn't going to do a lot for Cleveland, in my opinion.
The only chance you have to make this interesting is to go with the Jameis show, but they're done with that. All right, I think they've just moved on from that. They're saying, listen, it's draft season already. We're losing this game, and we're moving on, which is fair. But yeah, Baltimore playing to play for as long as Pittsburgh wins on Saturday, because Pittsburgh does play on Saturday. Baltimore plays on Sunday. If Pittsburgh loses, then Baltimore has the division clinch, and they can rest their starters if they do please. And we'll get to that Pittsburgh-Cincinnati game far into the end of the show because we are going to leave the best games for last. But you'll see our takes on that game in a while. But yeah, I mean, we do throw around no path to victory a decent amount, but I feel like this one's really warranted because if Baltimore starts their players, their best guys, there's just no way that Cleveland can do it. I mean, Bailey Zappi, he had 2 good games in his career.
Just about.
Yeah, and you know what? Run game's going to be non-existent. Pass game's going to be worse somehow. Lamar against the Browns defense. It's awful.
Baltimore is the 3:30 game on Saturday. They're the first game of the week.
Oh, they're the first game of the week. Oh, okay, that makes sense. I was confused. Then yeah, they will not be able to. They will start, and yeah, that's insane. I mean, one little thing I'd like to point out about Cleveland is they actually have the highest pressure rate of any defense in football this year. I was shocked when I figured that out, but they have the highest defense. But I mean, when you're going up against the statistically best quarterback against pressure in the league, it's not like that's going to be some big advantage. There's nothing that they do better than Baltimore, and Baltimore does some things bad, but Cleveland does them worse.
The Browns don't have the highest pressure rate in the league. Myles Garrett does, and he has
of course.
The Browns. I think that's important to establish. One more thing before we move on. Was the Browns benching Jameis and putting Dorian Thompson-Robinson under center? Was that the most we are tanking move of the year?
I don't know if it was the most we are tanking move of the year. I mean, putting Mason Rudolph in for Tennessee, that's really next level. But I think that was partly we are tanking, but partly Jameis, listen, I don't know what the hell you're doing, man, because it was getting worse. It was getting pretty bad in his last game. So they couldn't, as a professional franchise, put him out there continually, which is weird because they put Deshaun Watson out there for 9 games. So I don't know. They've shown that they have a capacity to put out awful players before and awful people, but they said they were done with the Jameis experiment. They put in DTR and he's worse. So it seems like nothing can go right in Cleveland.
It's like they distilled the essence of Jameis.
Yeah. Yeah, you got all of his bad and none of his good.
All right, enough of that one. We've got a lot of blowouts on the docket this week. We've got a lot of rested starter games on the docket this week. So I want to set us up right with a game that could feature either, and that's the 10-6 Chargers taking on the 4-12 Raiders. Chargers only favored by 4.5 because we don't know whether or not they're going to be playing their starters. That hinges on whether or not they could earn the 5 seed, which hinges on whether or not the Steelers beat the Bengals. However, it is Jim Harbaugh, and I wouldn't put it past him to just play Justin Herbert anyway because 11 wins look prettier than 10. If it is the starters for the Chargers, they're going to beat the snot out of the Raiders. I mean, that's just what the Chargers do. They might not have the upper level talent. I mean, their wide receiver one is Ladd McConkey to hang with really, really good teams like the Ravens. But you put them out there against a 4-win Raider squad, it's going to be a massacre.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have 2 predictions for this game. One if the starters play, one if they don't. My prediction for if the starters play, it's 34-7 Los Angeles. And they showed what they can do last week against bad football teams. Won 41 to, I believe it was 10 against New England, and it was just a massacre. So Los Angeles, that when everything's functioning against bad teams, that's the sign of an actual quality team. Is you can beat up on bad teams consistently, and Los Angeles can do that. And Las Vegas is a bad team, so it'll get bad if Chargers have something to play for. But again, Pittsburgh plays on Saturday, and Los Angeles does play on Sunday. I'm sure of that this time. So they will know if they have something to play for. I still think Harbaugh plays his starters at least for a half because that's just kind of the culture he built. We're going to play, like Dan Campbell said, even if they clinched the division this past week, he was still going to play him against Minnesota.
So if they weren't to play the starters, or maybe Justin Herbert plays a half, Chargers backup is Taylor Heineke. I still think that version of the offense might be able to move the ball against the Raiders, who with Max Crosby on IR just don't really do any phase of the game well. However, Las Vegas, I feel terrible saying this. I almost think their offense is a little bit underrated because there are only really 2 things that they do. They throw to Brock Bowers and they occasionally throw to Jacoby Myers, but it works against some of the worst defenses in the NFL. If the Chargers were to sit a bunch of starters, which again, they've built this culture around just winning all of the winnable games, I certainly think that they give them a half. But against the Bolts backups, I definitely think the Raiders can move the football. I am going to pick the Chargers to win. I forgot to even make a score prediction for this game because it honestly doesn't matter. But if I had to choose like the aggregate, I think the Chargers win more than they don't. I would give the edge to the Raiders if the Chargers sit their starters the full game, though.
Honestly, if the Chargers sit their starters, I still have the Chargers winning.
Sure.
But I do see what you're saying. I think the Raiders are clearly not the worst team in the league, which is it's really easy not to be the worst team in the league this year because there's some really bad teams. But you know what? They went out there and they beat up on the Saints last week. Credit to them. O'Connell's probably not the worst starting quarterback in the league.
No.
But Heineke's also he's pretty good, right? He's got some talent, and I think the Chargers overall, this would be a difference in play calling. If they were to still win this game, this is just be the biggest difference in play calling we've seen for the Chargers all season, because ultimately it's still Harbaugh and Minter out there calling plays. And I think that definitive culture that they have there, and they know what they're doing, even with their backups. I think that's more than the Raiders have, because Pierce has shown that Pierce and this entire staff have shown that they can't really call for shit this year. So I doubt any of them are there next year, maybe one of them. But I still think the Chargers win. I think Harbaugh gets them there. I think the backups want to play for Harbaugh even more, give themselves a shot, because you got to remember, these backups' chances. Most of them are on one-year contracts. This is my chance to show teams I can get another year. So I'm still going to take the Chargers.
If I'm looking for one thing this game, one thing that could be remotely entertaining, J.K. Dobbins, I don't think you mess around with playing him. He's got a pretty significant injury history. Gus Edwards is injured. I want to see Kamani Vidal with a full workload.
I agree.
Like Tim a lot coming up. He's had a few flashes this year. Hasn't really been able to snare the starting job away from Gus Edwards when J.K. Dobbins was on IR. But, maybe it's 15, 20 touches. Could be moderately entertaining in a game that it's 15th in a terrible week for a reason.
Yeah, let's give Vidal like 25 carries and let him go for 202 just to mess with fantasy drafters next season. Well, Vidal had the great season had the great game at the end of the season, and you know what? Maybe Dobbins isn't going to get carries, so Vidal's a league winner, and then he just doesn't do it next year.
Break the all-time record.
Yeah, exactly. I mean that's what they do.
Next up, we have a collision of play styles. In one corner, a precise field general wielding unrivaled accuracy and precision. Enter Michael McCorkle-Jones. In the other corner, a veteran gunslinger with nothing left to lose. Enter Joseph Vincent Flacco. It's the Jags. It's the 7-9 Colts eliminated from playoff contention. Colts favored by 4.5. Indy's probably going to be down Anthony Richardson. It's not made official. I don't think it really makes much of a difference. What should I be looking for in this game between two eliminated teams?
The Colts, as you said, nothing to play for, but Jacksonville, they gave themselves a lot to play for a couple of weeks ago when they won that game against Tennessee. So, both teams probably want to lose this game deep down. But if we're looking for something, let's say because the players want to win. The teams might not want to win, but the players want to win. If we're looking for something, I like a matchup to decide this game. I think Josh Hines-Allen versus Bernard Ryman. On the edge, I think that'll be a really big thing because if the Jags can make Flacco uncomfortable in the pocket, that's their path to victory. They need to make Flacco uncomfortable, and their best route to doing that is going to be Hines-Allen. I mean, he's the only guy that's really gotten consistent pressure. Trayvon Walker's had his moments, but there have been too few and far between. So Hines-Allen, if he can get some pressure against an admittedly very good tackle in Ryman. That's a path to victory for Jacksonville. But again, if Indy can go out there, they can give Flacco a clean pocket for most of the game. Ryman can do his job, or maybe Hines-Allen, you got him going against Braden Smith most of the game. Even then, Braden Smith's a damn good tackle. So if you can keep Flacco clean, I think this will be an easy win for Indy. I think the only way that Jacksonville really wins this game is if they can make Flacco uncomfortable, force a couple of turnovers. And I do think they will do that. I think they'll make it interesting. I actually did not have a store prediction for this one either. I think Indy wins by a field goal. Really.
It's funny that you say that, and it's funny how often this happens because I have pressure as my number one deciding factor, and my matchup to watch is Josh Hines-Allen versus Matt Gonzalez, I believe.
Oh, is Smith up?
Gonzalez, but yes, Braden Smith is ruled out. And Gonzalez has actually had some decent weeks this year. He hasn't been a liability. Against Josh Allen, though, obviously not a good season for the Jags. Josh Hines-Allen still out there doing his thing. And if there is an overwhelming amount of pressure, that could be huge because it's going to come down to turnovers. It's going to be a messy game. The reason I like the Colts more, I think they're going to be able to run the ball. I think they'll be able to generate some explosives against a very bad secondary, and I think that's going to be enough. However, Brian Thomas Jr. is a borderline wide receiver one. I mean, am I wrong about that? I thought he was just a vertical threat coming out, but he hasn't been the case.
It really is. I was not the biggest BTJ guy coming out of the draft because I was like, I don't know if you can move horizontally. I don't know if you can run a dig route, right? They just ran slot fades with him at LSU every play. I was like, if you need somebody to run slot fades, Brian Thomas is your guy. But he's more than that. He's unlocked second gear at the next level, and he's an exciting player to watch. I don't think he's in like top 15 talks like some people online are saying, but he's damn good, and that's actually my matchup. My second matchup to watch is him versus Jalen Jones on the outside.
The fact that he's doing this in a Mac Jones offense makes it all the more impressive. I have Brian Thomas Jr. in one of my dynasty leagues, and he was having a great season with Trevor Lawrence. T-Law goes down, and it's like, well, you're going to my bench for the rest of the year. And that hasn't been a case. He's been a legitimate 3-level impact. And in these games between definitively bad teams, sometimes all it takes is a Brian Thomas Jr. to go off for, say, 8 catches for 120 and 2 touchdowns, and that's going to be the deciding factor. I've got this one, Colts 28, Jags 20, because I like the Colts run game a little bit better, but Jacksonville, I think, will be in it.
I think Brian Thomas Jr., you know what, if Lawrence is actually bad, like I don't think he is, but if Lawrence this year's not just a fluke, Brian Thomas Jr. will follow a Terry McLaurin career arc. I am certain of it. And I really hope it doesn't happen. But
that is
that's what's going to happen.
I hope he gets his Jaden Daniels in this future scenario.
Yeah, like 6 years down the line.
All right, it's the NFL's oldest rivalry. The Chicago Bears and good quarterback play. The 4-12 Bears head to Green Bay, head to Lambeau, 10-point underdogs. The Packers are in the number 6 seed with a win and a Commanders loss. I think that Chicago's offensive line is a complete non-starter at this point. There is reason to be kind of bearish on the Packers defense. Jair's probably done for the season. They're going to be down Brenton Cox, and they've really been hurting for pass rush at times this year. Evan Williams probably not going to play. Ultimately, I don't think it matters. Caleb Williams deserves a lot of blame for how long he holds the football, but the Bears' offensive line and play calling just isn't giving him a chance, in my opinion.
I agree. I mean, Caleb has a lot of issues, and they've come on really strong this year. We've seen the bad parts of him, but I don't think the bus talk is unwarranted. He's shown a lot this year. The stats aren't awful, right? He has shown that he can be a top 10 quarterback because he's shown that he has the traits needed to do that. He's made some incredible throws. He just needs to put it on tape more consistently. And you know what? Putting up 3 points against Seattle's not great. Right? Obviously, that game's not going to go in the highlights of his career column, but I don't think it's proof that he's awful or anything. I think he had his moments in that game. You would like him to have more moments on the season, but he's still showing you something, and he's not working with much. Everybody's saying he's got these 3 great receivers, but Keenan Allen, boy, what happened to him? DJ Moore, he's been off and on in a Dunze, struggling to adjust to the pro league. I still think he's been good, but offensive line, not a single help. Coaching carousel has not helped them at all. The run game has not provided any consistency or anything to fall back on for Williams. So it's been a hard situation, contrary to what people will tell you. But going to the actual game, it's hard to predict a win. It really is.
I think the Seattle game requires some context. This was never going to be set up well for the Bears. I mean, obviously the offensive line issues versus a very creative Seattle front seven. Obviously the Seahawks know how to scheme up pressure with all the chess pieces they have up front. It was a rain game, and in a rain game, you want to work downhill. You want to run between the tackles. And when you have DeAndre Swift behind a terrible offensive line, thank God they went out and paid him a bunch of money in free agency. That's a really tough way to live. And still, did Caleb take too many sacks? Yes. But it felt like the limited success that he had was completely in spite of everything else going on for Chicago. I think it was the final drive where they had a chance to make it interesting at the end of the game, and they ended up running like a 4th and 10 play instead of kicking like a 58-yard field goal. Where it was 4th down, it was something like a zero blitz. Caleb Williams rolls out, extends the play, fires across his body, and it was a dart. He picked up the first down. I still see the arm talent. I think he needs to unlock it a little bit more, but I think you can put a ton of that on Chicago's coaching staff. I have a lot more faith in the Packers. I could certainly see him getting out to a big early lead, and then you turn on the brakes a little bit. Their depth isn't the best in the league. You don't want to deal with any injuries, but they're just going to have to run the ball with Josh Jacobs. I think that's all it's going to take.
Yeah, that's all I have. Just run the ball for Green Bay. You don't even need to throw the football. Chicago has an incredibly soft defensive line. My matchup to watch is Chicago Bears front seven versus tackling Josh Jacobs. They've just struggled with tackling, and Josh Jacobs is not an easy man to tackle. So it's going to be a hard game. And plus, it's the Toyota-thon Packers. This is a real thing. They're impossible to beat when Toyota-thon's. I think it's over now, though. So maybe Chicago gets the win, actually. Maybe Chicago gets the win. But at least we won't have to see too much of non-Toyota-thon Jordan Love this game. Jordan Love, we're going to talk about him a lot in next week's prediction episode, whenever they play their playoff game. But it's real. Packers are an interesting team that I'm excited to talk about next week, but there's not much we need to talk about them this week. And if you're a Bears fan, you just got to get through this game and then pray to whatever God you believe in that Ben Johnson decides Chicago is a good city to move to.
Before we move on, is Tremaine Edmonds healthy? Like, is Edmonds out there? Because I have not noticed him at all.
I think he is. Like, he's been a non-factor.
He's invisible.
Yeah, I looked at it. Usually he's one of the top tacklers in the league, but this year he's like 40th, I think, overall. He's just been a non-factor, really, not seeing the field. I mean, he's played every game. Yeah.
We're going to see some business decisions this week.
Oh, yeah.
Now we move on to the ghost of the New Orleans Saints, sitting at 5-11, headed to Tampa to take on the Bucs, who are favored by 14. The Buccaneers are favored by 14 in 2024. They haven't even clinched a playoff spot yet. They do clinch the NFC South with a win, which they're going to get. The real storyline here isn't the box score. It's how much Mike Evans contributes to it. He needs 85 yards, and I think he's getting it.
I think so, too. I mean, I think you could tell at the end of last game with Tampa Bay, they probably should have taken Evans out. They were like, no, we are getting you as many yards as possible. We are getting this record. I wish the Eagles had that same mentality. We'll get to it later, but Barkley is sitting. Evans, he wants that record. Tampa Bay everybody wants to see him get that record. It's everybody's favorite. And if he gets it this year, that's impressive because he missed like 5 games.
There's really no excuse for Tampa Bay and Baker not to light up the scoreboard. The reason that I'm ever so slightly concerned about Mike Evans is because Baker, I think, is a quarterback who will have the occasional unforced off game. We kind of saw that against the Raiders a couple weeks ago. But then his highs are spectacularly high, just absolutely lighting up the Panthers. We texted about that a little bit, like this might be a shootout and Tampa Bay might put up 45 points, and that's exactly what happened. Panthers just didn't have the roster talent. We'll talk about Bryce Young a little bit later. I think this is going to be an excellent game for the Bucs. As for the Saints, this offense is, I think, the worst in the league after what the Giants did the other week. No pass catchers, no run game. Olave might come back. Let's hope Olave doesn't come back. There's no reason to run him out there. Terrible line. Tampa Bay's defense has been disappointing this year, in my opinion. I think that it could be a suffocating force even without Jamel Dean and Antoine Winfield.
Yeah, I mean, New Orleans can only put up 10 against the Raiders, so it's not like you have anything to worry about. Tampa's defense probably been league average. I think that's a fair assessment to make of them, and that's enough to keep the Saints behaving. I have at 31-7. New Orleans has no semblance of a team, no coach, no nothing really. So I don't see any reason for optimism, even going into next year, because you still have 5 wins, and that's going to put you at like the 10th or the 11th pick this year.
Right,
normally 5 wins is enough to get you like 6 or 7, but there's a lot of bad teams, a lot of tanking teams. You can't even look forward to getting maybe a top 5 pick if you get a loss here. So it's just nothing going for Saints fans. I really feel bad for y'all.
Here's a little impromptu draft exercise. What is a position the Saints don't need this April?
There isn't really a position. I mean, if you want to say running back, maybe. If you're a really big Kendre Miller believer, right? You think Kamara is still showing he's a good running back. Kendre Miller, if you really like him, maybe you can say they don't need running back. Other than that, everything.
Maybe wide receiver, but Olave, he's so talented. I just hope that his head can hold up for the future.
Yeah, I mean, because that's
it's scary.
That's like 3 concussions by now. It's scary for Olave.
Let's just hope everyone stays healthy in this one. It's kind of like the varsity team versus a JV team type of scrimmage. We hope that the JV team just survives.
Yeah.
All right. The Texans might be dead on arrival in the playoffs, but the Titans were dead on arrival in the regular season. Houston heads to Tennessee to take on the 3-13 Titans, who are favored. The Texans are locked into the 4 seed. They say they're going to play their starters. We'll see how long that lasts. It's going to be a certified slop fest. It's a rain game. We don't care about the final score. Victor, did you hear the news?
What news?
Levis is back.
Yes! The Balls Talk Sports MVP is coming back for one final game. Maybe his last game, so we better enjoy it. He's playing. Possibly. I mean, you never know. I think he could be a backup in the league, maybe. I think there will be a team that wants – hell, the Broncos took a shot on Zach Wilson. Somebody's going to want Levis. But we get to see him in all of his glory one more time as the Tennessee Titans starter. I'm excited. I think he gets the win. No, I think if Houston plays their starters, they'll win comfortably. But I still do think Tennessee's got a chance in this one. Just run the ball. That's all. That's all you have to do against Houston right now. Run the ball. And Tennessee's running offense is not that half bad. Brewer, like we talked about in our Pro Bowl Spectacular, he's been mauling guys. You got a couple of backs back there, Pollard and Spears. They're good. Skoronski, Latham on the left side. They've been a lot better this season. So run the ball against a kind of a soft Texans run defense. Maybe you control the pace. Maybe you stay in this one. Maybe you sneak out a win and lower your draft stock even further.
So I think with Will Anderson and Daniel Hunter on the field, I think it's going to be shock and awe. I think that there's a higher chance that the Titans put up points for the Texans than the Titans put up points for the Titans. The Titans' offensive tackles this game are going to be John Ojukwu and J.C. Latham. Latham allowed 2 sacks in this matchup last time. Little side note, you remember Nicholas Petty-Ferrer, who was like starting for a while, terrible? He is now 3rd on the depth chart for the Titans, factoring in injuries. So there you go. However, I think that the Texans probably pull their starters pretty early because I don't think it's going to be competitive in the first half. And that's why I actually do have the Titans winning this one 26-24. I think that Tennessee is going to run the ball in garbage time. Tony Pollard could have a very nice day. If he's healthy and ready to go, I believe. Is Tyjae Spears healthy? Is he on IR?
Oh, he might be on IR, actually. He might be, but Pollard's healthy.
They're the same person in my mind. My matchup to watch is T'Vondre Sweat versus whoever the Texans are putting out there on the interior offensive line.
I like that. I think it'll be Patterson, which I was worried if it was Scruggs because Sweat might just kill him. Like he might just fall on top of him. That's like a 60-pound difference, I think.
Did you see T'Vondre Sweat just fold Bo Limmer in half at the Senior Bowl?
And that's Bo Limmer, too. Bo Limmer's stout.
It could be, again, this is a varsity JV thing. I just hope everybody is safe from T'Vondre Sweat. But it's not just that there's uncertainty on who they actually put out there. They're injured on the interior offensive line. And when you've got Joe Mixon in the game, who I think they're going to pull pretty early, that might not matter as much. When it's whoever's next in line, I don't know if Dameon Pierce is healthy against quite possibly backup offensive linemen at some point. Then this starts to become a liability, and that's why I have the Titans winning. I don't know. It doesn't really matter.
I don't think you should play Mixon or Collins. Both guys have struggled with injuries this season and in their careers, and they're really your only shot at winning against either the Chargers or the Steelers. Though the Steelers seem to be on a downward trend too. If it's Texans Steelers, we might get a Who Wants It Less classic in the playoffs. If it's Texans Steelers. So yeah, that's their only chance. If Collins and Mixon are out there, they've got a chance. If they're not, I really struggle to see how the Texans going to win playoff games. So I don't think you take your chances. I think you bench those guys. If you want to play Stroud, that's great. But Collins and Mixon need to stay on the bench for the entire game.
I completely agree. All right, I just got a breaking news alert. Saquon Barkley has been benched for Kenneth Gainwell, not because they're resting him, but because Nick Sirianni says that Kenneth Gainwell is the better running back. Philly favored by 2.5 against the 3-13 Giants. Eagles are locked into the number 2 seed. They're going to be resting virtually all of their starters. They won't even put Kenny Pickett out there. It's going to be Tanner McKee, who I think threw 4 passes in relief of the injured Pickett versus the Cowboys. And he's going to be tested by pressure all day because I think that what makes the Eagles run so well, and like run as an offense, as a machine, but also run the football, is their elite offensive line play. You rip away that safeguard, I think we see a much different version of Philly's offense.
I agree. That is what worries me. But I'm kind of excited to see this game because I kind of like there's some guys on the Philly backup squad. You know, there's a couple of younger guys that I'm excited to see. Most namely Tyler Steen, a 3rd-round pick from Alabama a couple years ago. I think he'll play guard. I think they moved him to guard. So I'm excited to see him. I think they got a guy in like the 4th or the 5th round. Let me see. Trevor Keegan. Yeah, I cannot remember for the life of me where he went, but maybe the rookies put together a good enough performance, but no. Yeah, and that's the thing. This Giants team, all of their faults, they've been able to put together some decent pressure games, like just getting pressure on guys. And against a backup offensive line, that could really make the difference. So I do have the Giants winning this too, 17-14. Don't think the offense is going to do much against a really, really deep Eagles defense. Like this team is not only this has a lot of elite top-end talent, but also has a million guys for depth. Like Milton Williams is technically their 3rd guy, even though he's probably the second most talented guy in that defensive line room. But he's technically their third guy. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets snaps today, and he's playing at a potentially Pro Bowl level right now. So I hate benching Barkley, though. I'm curious what you think, though. Barkley could get injured, right? But this is the chance at a record as big as a single season rushing yards record. I'm curious to see what you think about this.
This is a really, really tough conversation. I mean, when I was thinking about it before they officially announced the decision, I didn't know what I would do. I think what you do is you ask Barkley, because the Philly is very much in competition for a Super Bowl. They're not like the Texans or the Steelers. I guess now you know what I think about the Texans and the Steelers. I mean, I don't know if they're Super Bowl favorites, but they are absolutely up there. And if you lose Barkley, all of the math changes. But on the other hand, he's going to make history on the other end if you put him out there and he runs for, what did he need, like 110-ish?
Yeah, he just needed 101.
The reason that ultimately I would probably side with benching Barkley, as much as I hate that, is I think it's irresponsible to run him out there with the backup offensive line and let him get hit in the backfield, that sort of thing. So if you are going to play Barkley, I think you have to play the starting line, at least for a while. It's going to be a high volume game, force feeding him the ball. I would rather be in competition for a ring and play it smart and bench the starting offense. But it really is a tough decision, and he did deserve the record, I feel, this year. He's been that excellent.
I get it. I get it. And I think I may do the same thing. But I think it's also just championships aren't the only thing that matters. This is something that absolutely matters. And there was an interview with Barkley. Just like, did you want to play for the record? And he was like, man, Sirianni asked me. He was like, do you want to play? And I was like, he said he'd do whatever is best for the team. But he wanted the record. But you know what? If it was best for the team for him to sit, then he was okay with that. Sounded like he wanted the record. And Sirianni was like, well, you didn't explicitly say, play me, so I'm going to bench you. Maybe it's definitely best for the team, but I don't know. I would have liked to see him go out there and try and get it, but I get it. If you play him, you have to play the offensive line, and that's risky. But it's a bummer that he can't do it, especially because they're playing New York. How awesome would it be to see him break the rushing record against New York?
Exactly. That makes it tough.
I do get it.
I can see it now. I can see him throwing the helmet on, sprinting off the sidelines, ripping the ball away from Kenneth Gainwell during the handoff. And I mean, he only has to do that twice because he's going to run the full field both times.
Exactly. You just put him out there for two. You let him run for a 75-yard touchdown in the first play, then 52 yards on the next play, and then he's got the record by a comfortable margin, and then you sit him. Not that hard.
And when you say let him, to be clear, that's talking about the Eagles coaching staff, not the Giants, because the Giants aren't letting him do anything.
The Giants don't have a choice in this. I mean, exactly. They couldn't. They're not even good enough to let somebody do something. The other team will decide what they want to do. If they want to lose 2 yards, they'll lose 2 yards. If they want to throw a 75-yard touchdown, they'll throw a 75-yard touchdown. The Giants have no say in it.
Absolutely. And that kind of softness in the trenches has been pervasive for them all year long. It's only been exacerbated with Dexter Lawrence out. My swing factor for this game, again, going against the Eagles backups, is can they get downhill a little bit and establish a run game? Because I still think that the Giants' banged up offensive line, they're down Evan Neal, who sucks as bad in pass pro as always, but has been run blocking a little bit, quite possibly John Michael Schmitz. Can the kind of sort of beat up Giants offensive line, can they generate push against the Eagles backups? I don't know that they can, but if so, Tyron Tracy could have a nice game. Drew Lock stays clean. One of the deciding factors in how good the Giants were against Indy is Drew Lock wasn't under constant pressure. There's absolutely a path for the Giants. I have them winning 20-17.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's tough for Giants to move the ball even against the Philly backups because, as I said, this is a really deep defense, especially in the front seven. They love to just get those guys, develop them. That's what they do best, especially Fangio. He's done wonders with this backup unit along with the front, the starting unit, of course. But Drew Lock, I think he can win it for him. I do. So I picked the Giants. I think he had a 1.18 EPA per play last week. Like, I think that may be the highest that we've seen this year. I don't think the Giants need Cam Ward or Shadur Sanders. I think they got their guy in the building, right? They got Drew Lock. All right, so I think he'll put up another great performance against Philly. He'll make him think twice before drafting a quarterback. You know what? Maybe he does play well enough, and the Giants just decide we're not going to draft a quarterback, and that's probably the right decision in this class. If you have the number 1 pick or the number 2 pick or whatever, don't draft the quarterback that high. I think that may be the right decision.
You know, I could actually see the Giants, if Drew Lock goes out there and plays really well, paying their quarterback a whole bunch of money based on a very limited sample size with strong factors that they aren't sufficiently taking into account, and then playing him and he's bad for about 2 years and then cutting him midseason.
I actually don't see that happening. I don't see that. What evidence do you have that they would ever do that?
I think they had a guy, his name was like Nichols or something.
Oh, yeah, Daniel Nichols. I remember him.
I forget where he is. I think he's in the XFL.
Yeah, no, I think he's on the street.
All right, we got the 13-3 Bills. This is a very, almost comically similar game, by the way. The 13-3 Bills taking on the 3-13 Pats in Foxborough. Buffalo favored by 2.5, and I'm pretty sure that's strictly a reaction to the fact that Josh Allen is starting this game. What it sounds like is they want to continue his games started streak to, maybe at some point in the future catch up to Brett Favre. I imagine he gets one drive. And once all the Bills' backups are on the field, I think Drake May might be one of the best players out there.
I agree. I think he's going to put on a show. He hasn't had the chance to do that against this is finally going to be a chance for the Patriots to have a similar offensive skill level to the defensive skill level. And they're finally playing a backup unit like their offensive unit plays like, right? So I think this offensive line finally won't be outmatched. They might still be outmatched, if we're being honest. They might still be outmatched because I think Von Miller's technically a backup. So Von Miller could legitimately get 3 or 4 sacks.
But there's no way they play Von Miller. No.
They don't play him because he's going to get hurt. But technically he's a backup, so that would be fun to see Von Miller
go out there and just wreak absolute havoc, yes.
Yeah. I mean, just have fun. Play like Broncos Von Miller one more time because he's clearly not that guy anymore. I think he can still be a valuable playoff piece, though. He's always better in the playoffs. So I think they absolutely sit him. But May's still probably going to be under pressure against I don't even know who their backups are. Come to think of it, yeah, he's still going to be under pressure. They're starting Vidarian Lowe or somebody. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think Nwenu did. Did switch to tackle, so they might have more protection. But even then, you're going to get hit from the interior. I think maybe his receivers will get open against backup corners. Maybe, who knows? But I think he'll have an easier time, and we'll see what Drake May really can be when his offense is on par with what he's playing.
What I love is May's escapability because, when the pocket is caving in from every direction, there's only so much you can do. But say if only your left tackle and left guard get beat, well, then Drake May can escape to the right. He's second or third in scramble yards on the season, by the way, which I thought was crazy. But it's not just Drake May. He's going to be under pressure. However, if they can run the ball and get into the play action game, I think that could be a huge factor. The Bills are down to scraps in the front seven. I think Balen Spector is on IR. Their other linebackers are beat up. It's hard to even tell who their starting linebackers are going to be this game. They were like Detroit a couple of games ago where they're just kind of out of dudes. They're signing people off the street territory. And I think those are some of the few game scripts where the Patriots have been moderately effective on offense this year, is where you can't hand the ball off to Ramondre Stevenson. Also, you have to get a game where he doesn't fumble it once or twice. But I do like the Patriots. I think they're going to move the ball. I have them winning 28-21. And then for Buffalo, it's going to be Mitch Trubisky, quite possibly the most underrated quarterback in the NFL. Keon Coleman's probably going to be out there. I think they might be able to move the football themselves a bit.
I think so. I mean, Trubisky, not a bad quarterback. He can definitely run an offense. You get Tyrell Shavers. Maybe he takes a 67-yard screen to the house like he did last week against the Jets. They're not playing a defense as bad as the 2024 New York Jets, unfortunately.
Wild.
But that's insane that they're actually. And we'll get to the Jets in a couple minutes, but yeah, I think Buffalo could move the ball and they could legitimately win with their backups because they have a decent backup offensive unit, but ultimately I'm going to take the Patriots in this one just because I think Drake May, I like him more. I think Drake May versus Caleb Williams is an interesting conversation.
Oh,
I think they've had similar seasons as far as their team is not helping them, and they've both had a very glaring issue, which May, for him, it's turning the ball over, and Williams, for him, it's taking the bad sacks. So I think people constantly talking about how great May has been and constantly disparaging Williams when they've had relatively similar seasons is pretty weird. I have hopes for both of them in the future. I think May's been a little bit more promising, but I think they've had more similar seasons than people are willing to discuss.
The answer is somehow Michael Penix.
Yeah, I mean, how crazy is that, by the way? We've got five rookie quarterbacks, all top 12 picks that have played, and they all look like they could theoretically be the franchise guy.
That is insane. It feels like every year we have this discussion where, oh, there are 5 or 6 QBs in first round contention. 2 of them are going to be hits and 4 of them are going to be busts. That's just not the way it is. You can absolutely have a class where 5 out of 6 guys hit. The 6th is Josh Rosen.
But we still don't. Surely JJ McCarthy has got to be like the worst player to ever play football. He's got to be Jamarcus Russell level territory. Because there's just no way. There's no way we get 6 hits.
They used up all my talent.
They took it all. Oh my God.
I think JJ McCarthy is technically in this year's quarterback class, though. So
that's fair because somebody's gonna they're gonna pay Darnold. Somebody's gonna trade the number 2 pick for him, and then he's just gonna be a 2025er.
Oh, I can't wait for the offseason and free agency. It's gonna be a fun time.
Oh yeah. Oh, the Darnold discussion is going to be absolutely amazing.
Oh, it's been awesome all year long, and it's only getting better.
Yeah.
Now we got the 9-7 Seahawks taking on the 10-6 Rams. The Rams secure the number 3 seed with a win. They're apparently going to rest their starters anyway. I find that to be really interesting because maybe I'm wrong, but looking at the playoff picture, isn't that the difference between playing the Lions or Vikings and playing the Commanders or Packers?
It is, because if you win this game, you play the Commanders, probably. If you lose, you're playing the Lions or the Vikings, a top 2 team in the NFC. I don't get this for McVay. I don't at all.
Maybe he's playing the math game, which we know McVay's an analytics guy. They wouldn't shut up about it on broadcasts like 3 years ago. And he says, we maybe win this game 60-65% of the time, and it's not worth incurring the fatigue and the injuries to play, potentially a beat up Lions team. I still don't get it. I think you go out there, you keep everybody fresh in terms of mental preparedness. You try and win the game. You beat a divisional opponent, and you end the regular season on a high note. Instead, they're going to start Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah. Listen, I think if you want to start Garoppolo today or on Sunday, I understand that. Stafford's old. He's had elbows problems his entire career. You want to rest him? I'm okay with that. But they're resting Nakua. They're resting Kupp. They're resting most of the offensive line. They're resting Kyron Williams. They're resting Dotson and Alaric Jackson. I don't get resting anybody other than Stafford, really, because I think you can win this game with Garoppolo. He's not going to fall into the traps that McDonald sets for rookie guys because he's a veteran and he's seen a lot. I think you win this game with Garoppolo. I really do. But I don't think you win it without your top 2 receivers, without your stud offensive linemen, without some key defensive pieces. So it's just baffling that you'd rather play the Lions/Vikings on an admitted after a bye week than the Commanders after a regular week. I just don't get it.
Now that you talk about who in particular the Rams are resting, I kind of get it because I think what McVay is scared of is all of those guys you just named in the receiver room and on the offensive line and Stafford all get injured, and you walk into the playoffs as the week 5 version of yourself. And it's like walking into the playoffs with your hands off. It's like, well, I guess we're the 25th best team in football now because everyone got hurt. I still don't agree with it, but I kind of understand it. You have a lot of very injury-prone veterans.
I do get it. Up and Nakua both dealt with injuries earlier this season, but I think it's worth the risk. You can't beat. You already showed that you couldn't beat the Lions when you were at full strength earlier this season and the season before that. They did beat the Vikings, to be fair, and they were kind of understaffed in that game. So maybe they're like, let's just do that to the Vikings again. Maybe that's McVay's thought process. We
That
went
was
to over.
getting Puka and Cup game back, which I think played a role. I also,
That's
at the
true.
time, I thought that game was very fluky. They got a lot of ticky-tack penalties on the Vikings.
Yeah.
I do understand that from a decision-making standpoint. Once we beat them, I think it was 20-30, 2 scores. Maybe we can do it again. I would still probably prefer to play the starters. When in doubt, you play to win the game, is my philosophy.
And you did take Detroit to overtime when they were fully healthy. So I kind of get it, right? We have played both of these teams. We believe in our guys. We can if we want to win the Super Bowl, we got to beat anybody. So let's get our guys a week of rest, and then we'll do it. The actual game, I don't think the backups really stand a chance. But yeah, now that you've explained, I get the decision.
My swing factor in this game is going to be the Rams' defensive line rotation. Did he say anything about Jared Verse playing? About, I mean, the young guys like Braden Fisk playing, Kobe Turner going to rest as more of a veteran guy.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think he said anything about them, but he might play Verse and Turner and Fisk and those guys, and if he does, then maybe there's a path to victory, getting a bunch of pressure on Smith, but I don't know.
Well, the reason that's my factor is because if they don't go and you've got the Rams backup defensive line, I think we could be in for a really big game for Charbonnet. Who did the Seahawks run on that one time with Charbonnet this season? The one time that they ran the ball effectively? Who was that?
I think that was the Rams.
What was it? The Rams?
I don't remember. I am a Charbonnet fantasy owner, so I started him that week, but I don't remember. I think it was the Rams. Maybe it was
the Cardinals, was it?
No. Maybe it was. Let's see.
Let me look up Zach Charbonnet good week.
He said, it was the Cardinals. Yeah. He went for 22, 134, and 2. Yeah, he went for 2. Yeah. That is insane.
I think that Leonard Williams on the other end is going to cause havoc against the Rams' backup offensive line. We actually have a good understanding of the Rams' backup offensive line because we saw it for about the first 10 games of the season. So I think that it's clear advantage Seahawks against the Rams' backups. I do have them winning it. I didn't write down my score prediction. Again, this is a meaningless win for the Seahawks if they do pull it out. It doesn't especially matter, but I'll side with Seattle.
Yeah, I think this will be a big game for Geno to JSN. I think they're that JSN may get like 12 for 170 and 3. Like he might just go that big because if they do rest some of those guys, the pass rushers, Geno's going to have all day to throw. He's going to find JSN a lot.
Is JSN the second best primary slot in the NFL?
At this point, with how Cup's played the past few weeks, I think you can make an argument.
I would still probably take Cup over him, but he's really starting to close that space, especially as the young guy in Cup is obviously on the tail end of his career. It's a really bright future for JSN in Seattle.
Oh, yeah. I am curious about that, though. Like, I can't think of any more. I feel like there should be at least one pure slot that's better, but just slipping my mind right now. I mean, I guess if you consider Godwin a pure slot whenever he's playing, then yeah, take him. But I don't know if I consider him a pure slot. He plays on the outside a fair bit.
To me, there's a difference between guys that are limited by playing in the slot, guys who are definitively at their best in the slot but could play outside, and then guys who you use in the slot as a mismatch, kind of like Devontae Adams or CeeDee Lamb. I would put Chris Godwin in that tier. So, yeah, I would say between guys who could play outside but are at their best in the slot, I would probably put JSN 3, and it's close with him and Cup.
I agree. And then St. Brown's the clear one. I don't think that he's a guy you put as a mismatch on. I think he would be worse as an outside guy versus like your Lambs, your Godwins. I think you put him outside, they're just as good. You just put them in there for a mismatch. And maybe the other personnel works better on the outside, so you're going to put them on the inside because they'll be just as good. ARSB is a guy, I just like him more in the slot.
Next up, and I ran out of transitions, by the way. I wrote my notes way too late. We got the 8-8 Dolphins taking on the 4-12 Jets. Miami is favored Tua is doubtful. It's probably going to be Snoop Huntley playing, and add Teron Armstead, Anthony Walker, Jordan Poyer, Jalen Waddle, Javon Holland to the report. The Jets are equally beat up and terrible. Quinnen Williams, Sauce, Morgan Moses, and Elijah Vera Tucker haven't played this week. It is going to be the husk of two AFC East teams going at it. And I don't know who I like better. I sided with the Dolphins because I think we kind of saw the blueprint last week against the Browns. I think the Jets and Browns are very similar defenses. Kind of rely on the splash plays, not super disciplined, breach contain, blow coverage assignments, that sort of thing. I'm intrigued to see who you've got.
Now, we all know who I want to win. For the uninitiated, I'm a Broncos fan, and if we somehow lose to the Chiefs' backups, now we probably don't deserve to be in the playoffs, but I'd still like to make the playoffs, and that would require a Dolphins and a Bengals loss. And this would be the first step. Now, I do have the Jets by a hair, and that's because I just believe in this version of the Jets offense more than I do any of the other three units on this team, on this field, which is weird because it's the 2024 Jets offense. But we saw what they can do against a bad unit in Jacksonville a few weeks ago. The Devontae Adams game, and really, I think it's going to come down to the fact. I think my matchup to watch is Devontae Adams versus Jalen Ramsey, which would have been must-see TV like 3 years ago, but now it's like, who cares? But it's because, you've got Garrett Wilson on Storm Duck on the other side. Garrett Wilson is going to get his, all right? So if he can go for, like, Garrett Wilson goes 9 for 134 and a touchdown, that's great. If Devontae Adams is dominating Jalen Ramsey on the other side, you can't win this game if you're the Dolphins. If you have two receivers dominating and getting big gains almost every other play, you just can't win this game. So if Devontae Adams can get the better of Jalen Ramsey on most of their snaps and Garrett Wilson does his job against Storm Duck, Jets should win it, but I think it's close. It's hard. These teams have been hard to predict all year, and now they're injured. I have no idea who's going to win this game. It's a coin flip. I don't think it really matters. It probably matters for the Dolphins, but I think Snoop Huntley had his one good week last year where he proves I can be a backup, pay me next year, and I think he's going to go back to being pretty bad this week. So
I've got two questions, one short, one long. My first one is Kendall Fuller still out for the Dolphins. Is he on IR some?
I don't know. I know he's out. No, it's Duck starting, but
okay. Yeah, that's absolutely a mismatch. Garrett Wilson on Storm Duck. Storm Duck has been gotten a lot this year. And then second, I was walking around the track above the gym at my local YMCA, and a thought occurred to me. Are the Jets just a worse version of the run and shoot offense with Aaron Rodgers and all these on-the-fly adjustments where nobody has any idea what the hell is going on? Like, is that what we're watching? Is that why it looks kind of like an FCS team sometimes?
Well, I think so, kind of. But the problem is with run and shoot, you do have to run. And I don't think the Jets have really shown much ability to run, especially Aaron Rodgers, right? The run and shoot, I don't think Rodgers really loves motion too much. And sometimes he does, but I think he likes his guys in specific areas. That's the difference between yeah, like you can move like a little. If you can twitch. If I see two twitches, you're off the team. But I think that's the one difference. But other than that, I mean, sometimes they do that though. The Jets' offense has been awful. Tyrod Taylor is absolutely a better quarterback at this point in his career. We saw that last week. So I don't know. The Jets, sometimes they look pretty good. They look like they're putting it together. Sometimes they have bad performances like they did against the Bills this week. It would be disingenuous for me to tell you I knew who was going to win. I have no clue. I picked the Jets because that's probably just wishful thinking, honestly. I picked the Jets.
They aren't run and shoot. They're just shoot.
Yeah, exactly. Really as in Aaron Rodgers is going to shoot his receivers in the face if they don't do exactly what he thinks they're going to do.
You really hit it on the head because the Jets' offense is so frustrating. They can have really solid games because they have some of the high-end talent. They don't have, like, say, a bottom five offensive line. They're just the least cohesive unit in the NFL. I think a lot of that comes from they kind of play the Rodgers quick pass time of possession ball, and then they don't have the horses to convert in the red zone. I swear they turn it over on fourth down as much as anybody in the league. Rodgers has to be leading the league in interceptions off passes swatted up at the line. It feels like it's something every week with the Jets. And the analytical part of me wants to say, all these are high variance plays. It's going to stop. The 25 points a game version of the Jets is the real one. But I can't get there. I was there maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago. It burned me. So that's why I'm going to side with the Dolphins 20-17.
That's fair enough. But I think the Jets season can really be condensed down into that one play we saw last week where Rodgers underthrows his receiver by like 5 yards and then starts yelling at him because he couldn't catch it. It's like, I mean, you can make an argument that the receiver stemmed the route too high. Like he was running too far up the field. But still, that's the thing. Rodgers motioned him up the field on that play, so he had to stem it higher because his quarterback was telling him to run up the field. Then Rodgers throws it into the dirt and blames it on. I don't remember who the receiver was, but I'm sure it'll be a guy out of the league by tomorrow. Yeah, it's just been a disaster.
You can also sum up the Jets season with the play where Rodgers throws over the middle. He doesn't have the arm strength, gets picked off, and then he draws an unnecessary roughness, or the play where I think he got strip sacked and he's staring at the football on the ground and he makes the Cam Newton in the Super Bowl type of business decision. There were a lot of plays that truly exemplify New York's season in that absolute collapse against the Buffalo Bills. Next up, we're headed to the NFC West. We got the 6-10 Niners taking on the 7-9 Cardinals. Two teams with, well, the Niners have had a disappointing season. The Cardinals are maybe where people expected them to be, but kind of ending the year on a sour note. Both teams eliminated, and about half of the 49ers starters haven't practiced yet. Brock Purdy's doubtful. It's probably going to be the Pastronaut. Josh Dobbs starting. I feel like this is kind of a toss-up. Who do you have?
See, my heart wants to go with Arizona, but, I'll come out and say it. Boy, was I wrong about the Cardinals. I was wrong. Mid-season, I really thought that they were going to run away with the NFC West. I thought that they were the best team clearly in that division. They were not. Everything seems to have gotten worse, and I think that comes along with Kyler Murray. Just, you know what? It was after the Call of Duty Black Ops 6 dropped. That's why they started being bad. It was because of that. But ultimately, I do have the Cardinals in this game because the Cardinals have been one of my teams this year that I've rode all the way to the end of the season. And listen, it burned me, but I will go out the way I entered the season, a Cardinals believer. I think they'll beat the Niners. Niners had a good week last week, but as you said, Purdy's not going to play. And we saw what this team looks like with the backup unit out there against, I believe it was Green Bay, and it was really bad, though they did start Brandon Allen in that one. But I think Arizona will play their guys. I think Connor will have a decent day. If he plays, I think Harrison gives fantasy owners something at the very end of the season. I think Murray delivers something. He makes some plays on the ground because the Niners are just done with playing football this year. They don't really want to run after him, So I got the Cardinals, but I think the Niners could win. It's just about who plays and who doesn't.
I think if the Cardinals can generate a lot of pressure, because that's been a little bit of a boon for the Cardinals, is getting consistent pressure, it could really be a kill shot against, this Josh Dobbs-led 49ers offense. So my matchup to watch is Baron Browning versus whoever suits up at tackle for the 49ers. I'm going to give you a list of the guys who could suit up at tackle for the 49ers. Spencer Burford, Colton McKivitz, Charlie Heck, and Austin Pleasants, who, full transparency, is a football player I have never heard of, but he sounds very groovy. And that has been my montage of players who could suit up at tackle for the San Francisco 49ers this week. I really think we're set up to see the worst of both teams. Unfortunately, not a lot to play for. Two teams really ending the season on a very dispiriting note. So I think this is not something you would expect based on the records, but a who wants it less classic. To me,
I agree. I
think decision who the Cards want it.
Yeah, I don't think anybody wants it, but I think the Cards, maybe Murray, something to prove. I don't know. But interesting stat about the 49ers. I saw this a couple days ago. I think for the last 20 years, if the 49ers play a season, they will either miss the playoffs or they will make the conference championship game. There is no in between. They have not lost a wild card or a divisional game in like 20 years.
Real wow. That is an interesting stat. I figured that would be like a Shanahan stat.
No,
Interesting.
I think it's like since maybe it's the millennium. Maybe it's since 2000. I can't remember when it was, but it's been at least 20 years since they've lost a divisional or a wild card game. So if the team isn't of a caliber to make a conference championship, you can bet they're going to miss the playoffs. If they're in a like a close run of, if they're in a close, they could make a run and get there. You can just bet that they're not gonna. So the Niners were never going to do it this year.
So the Cards are down James Conner. He's headed to IR. It's been a
Oh, yeah.
commendable season, buddy, even though you screwed me in the fantasy third place game and a little bit in the fantasy conference game, or the semifinal game, although he still rattled off like 20 in that win against Carolina before he left in the third quarter. Paris Johnson Jr. out as well. And my big thing on the Cardinals offense that I think not enough people talk about, because they had the really good weeks. And looking at the players that they have, I think that makes sense that the highs can be moderately high. I think that their lack of depth is pretty problematic because they lean on Marvin Harrison Jr. as a true number one wide receiver. And I don't think he's converted the tough catches he needs to return value in that role. He hasn't been a premium separator. And then your number two on the outside is Michael Wilson. And then your number three is probably Greg Dortch. So it ultimately falls on Connor to be exceptional on the ground and Trey McBride to be this team's true number one impact as a pass catcher. And I think once you get beyond those guys, you start to run out of gas. Same thing on the defense. They just don't have any talent, especially on the interior defensive line.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. In this receiver room, it feels like they're just missing an alpha. Like, if Harrison was the wide receiver 2, I feel like he's a really good wide receiver 2. Michael Wilson's a really solid wide receiver 3. Dortch is built. He's the ideal wide receiver 4. You know, they're just missing an elite top-end guy, and they just don't have that, and they've really been lacking depth. So if somebody's not having the best day, they can't kind of take him off and let another guy shine for a little bit. I'm hopeful. I think Trey Benson will probably play this week.
He is on IR.
Unless he's injured, he's on IR too. So yeah, it's gonna. Oh boy, I don't even know who's after that then.
Michael Carter.
Michael Carter. Yeah, I forgot. He's on Arizona now. Yeah, probably not gonna be the best day, but everybody's hurt. This is one where it's just like you can't really predict it because there's just so many guys we've never seen before. So many guys that we haven't seen all these guys play together. That's the more important part. It's not about how good each of these individual guys are. It's if they can play together. And ultimately, I think Gannon will put together a defense that is probably a little bit more impressive than what the Niners are going to put together. So with their depleted units. So I like Arizona here. Side note about James Conner in the fantasy championship. My championship is actually, it extends into week 18. So I'm in a really weird situation right now. I had an absolutely great week, though. Your boy is looking like he's going to win. I'm up like 50 right now because I had Higgins, I had McConkey, I had Smith, all of these guys on IR. McCaffrey I drafted first, doesn't matter. The 8-6 team pursued, but Connor did not show up for me last week. Started him. He was my RB1. He did not show up, so I could have won by more.
So you're going to win the championship. I made it to the semifinals in all three of my leagues. We are two certified fantasy football studs. Just another reason to listen to the podcast every week, or, when we actually get a podcast out.
Exactly. Listen, guys, I know we haven't had predictions since week 12? We had the Pro Bowl Spectacular. That was 3 hours. Hopefully that wasn't enough to satiate you, but it's been since week 12. But listen, Thanksgiving, finals, Christmas, it's been hard to, but now playoffs coming around. We're going to get an episode every week. We're going to try. All right. And then draft season, that'll be fun.
All right. We're kind of getting into the games that should at least be kind of entertaining to watch. We've got the 11-5 Commanders taking on the 7-9 Cowboys. Commanders favored by 6.5. The Commanders protect their number 6 seed with a win, and they're getting Austin Eckler back. So I think we could see a really nice performance from the Commanders offense. On the other end, the wheels just kind of fell off of Dallas, finally without CeeDee Lamb. It was a rough outing against a very good defense. I think that the Cowboys can move the ball a little bit. I always thought that Philly was going to be a terrible, terrible matchup for them because you can't get into the run script. They're going to shut down everything you want to do in the quick game. The Cowboys just were never going to be able to win any of the talent battles. I think they have a little more wiggle room in this matchup with the Commanders defense, but I do still have the Commanders winning 31-17.
Yeah, I have Washington 26-16, but I think I was really bullish on Dallas, but the Philly was always going to be a bad matchup for them, right? As you said, they were missing CeeDee Lamb, and it really showed how much he's contributed to that offense. But Dallas, what's really what they've actually done well over the past few weeks is they've actually figured out a way to get consistent pressure. Even Parsons has obviously been a big part of that, but they've been able to get some production from other guys too. But you're going up against a guy in Jaden Daniels who, man, last week he was just an escape artist. Like, they could not touch him. That final game-winning drive in overtime, they got to him like 6 or 7 times, and he just would not go down. Escaped the pocket time after time, got first downs, made the most out of bad situations. So I think Cowboys are going to bring everything they've got from the front seven. They're going to blitz a lot, but Daniels is just so smooth in the pocket, so comfortable, so good at beating the blitz. Maybe Parsons will bring him down a couple of times because there's nobody in Atlanta, the pass rush, that has that kind of athleticism to wrangle Jaden Daniels down. But it's not just with Daniels. Of course, it's not just the artistry of the escape, but he can hit guys on the run. He can hit guys from the pocket, and I think ultimately he's going to dismantle the Cowboys' defense that has been off and on this year. And Washington's defense will do enough against a Dallas unit that it's all right, but without Lamb, it's kind of pathetic.
I think Parsons has actually been the most efficient pressure generator in the NFL this year, if you don't count Aiden Hutchinson, which my heart wants to count Aiden Hutchinson and his epic, colossal run against a bunch of backup tackles before hopefully, as a football fan, I want to see him come back for the Super Bowl. If there's a path to victory, it is through pressure. I mean, we saw that in the Cowboys' win against the Panthers. We saw it in their win against the Buccaneers. It is Micah Parsons versus the world out there. But it isn't just the pressure because Jaden Daniels is an escape artist. Having DeMarcus Lawrence would have been really helpful for the Cowboys in this one. Parsons can flush Daniels to one side and Lawrence potentially with the cleanup sack. I don't think that the Cowboys have the horses. The Commanders can have the odd, bad, unforced offensive performance. I can't believe that they were a 2-point conversion away from losing to the Saints 2 or 3 weeks ago.
That's insane.
Commanders have something to play for. I really think they get the job done. And I just don't think that the Dallas offense is the same without CeeDee Lamb. He hasn't been perfect. I don't think he's been totally focused. He's had one of the higher drop rates in the NFL this year, but they just don't really have anybody without him. He takes some of the focus off your decent 2s and 3s like the Brandon Cookses of the world. I think it's going to be a rough day for Dallas.
I agree. And CD's been kind of asleep this year, but I mean, can you blame him? CD asleep is still better than most receivers in the league. So,
okay, this is my number 4 game, which should tell you a lot about the quality of the football games this week. It's the Panthers sitting at 4-12, taking on the Falcons at 8-8, who need some help to get into the playoffs. They would clinch the NFC South with a win and a Bucs loss, which we already talked about. The Panthers defense got absolutely annihilated by the Buccaneers last game. They're still down Josie Jewell. They're still down J.C. Horn. And Shaw Smith-Wade, the starting slot corner, not going to play either. The Falcons could put up 42 just like the Buccaneers did.
Yeah, for sure. Penix, we can talk about his performance against Washington all we want, but against bad defenses like New York 2 weeks ago, he showed what he can do. He can beat them. All right, he can put up points, he can play efficiently, he can play the right way, and he can win games against bad defenses, and I think that's what Atlanta does. But I think Carolina keeps it close because Atlanta's defense isn't all that good either. And as I've said many times, I'm a Bryce Young believer, and he's impressed. He's made me proud this year. He really has, and I think he'll finish out the year strong. He'll give Carolina a case for why I am the franchise guy and you need to keep me over this offseason. I think Atlanta wins, just more talent on that team, but I think Bryce gives him a scare.
So I'm a pathetic sicko. We know this. I'm on this podcast for a reason. And last night I was going for a walk around town and I started ranking quarterbacks a little bit in my head, thinking about who I would place in what tier. And so at 11 o'clock last night, I made a QB tier list and I really put thought into it. And I ended up with Bryce Young and Trevor Lawrence in the same tier.
Whoa.
I feel that they are limited upside quality starters. Now, limited upside for Lawrence doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's more about the way he plays, where he always seems to leave you wanting more. And Bryce Young, I think, is physically limited. Bryce Young is balling. Bryce Young looks like a good quarterback. I think it's been 7 games since he came back from being benched. He has been solid to great because his highs have been legitimately high. His highs have been number 1 overall pick highs in 5 out of 7. And one of those games was against the Broncos defense in his first game back, which is a hell matchup.
Okay.
Bryce Young was great against the Bucs, in my opinion. I mean, I watched that game and I thought he looked good. I thought he got let down by the surrounding situation around him. I think the Falcons are just going to beat the Panthers into the dirt with the run game. I think Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier have great days. But I think Bryce Young controls his controllables against a secondary that has been very underwhelming. And my final score prediction is Falcons 35, Panthers 20, but you can count on one of those being a dropped touchdown. So should be 35-27, we'll say. That's my prediction.
That's funny. I have Atlanta 34-20, so we're right there. But I did actually make I did a quarterback ranking on the Bladen Kirk website, where they do it's a whole algorithm thing. It's really cool. But I had Young, I think, around 18 or so, and I think Lawrence was about 17 for me. So he's right there. I think I had him in the Trevor Lawrence, Russell Wilson tier. Trevor Lawrence, Russell Wilson, Bo Nix, Caleb Williams tier. I have all those guys and kind of there's a whole mess of there's a lot of things wrong with them, but when they're on their game, we can win football games, right? But when they're off, it's going to be harder, but they still provide a relatively decent floor with a good ceiling, just not much consistency. And you'll hope for more, right? But Bryce and that's a heck of a call. Bryce and Trevor in the same tier. A lot of people don't see it that way, but if you're a real ball knower,
I gotta check on this quick. You had Trevor Lawrence, Bo, and Bryce Young, and I didn't save that. I think I had Russ in that tier, and I had Rodgers in that tier.
I had Rodgers in the tier below that. Huh?
We had 4 out of 5 in the same tier. That's absolutely wild.
Nice. I'm curious, is Tua in the tier above that or below that for you?
So they all go into tier 3, but I divided tier 3 into quality starter low upside, quality system dependent starter, and system independent high variance. So tier 3 had like 15 players in it, but that sub tier was kind of at the bottom of it.
Yeah, I had Tua below that. I think he ended up at like 23, 24. He and Rodgers were in the same spot for me. But I think over this offseason in the dead season, I think we'll do a full QB ranking. I think that could be fun. But
it's going to be scientific as hell.
Yeah, we'll get a little bit of a tease of how we think of it now.
All right, number 3, Victor, it's your time. The 15-1 Chiefs are headed to Denver. Broncos on the line, playing for a playoff spot, winning in the number 7 seed. Chiefs are going to rest virtually all their starters. You're going up against Carson Wentz. Do your boys in orange get the job done?
Well, first I'll say the last 2 weeks have been, oh boy, I have lost a lot of hair. I'm going gray. This is killing me. You got to remember, us Broncos fans, we've not been in playoff contention since 2016-15. We don't know how it feels. I think I was 9 or 10 the last time we were in playoff contention. No, I was 9. The last time we were in playoff contention, I was 9. So my body's not used to this. So it's been a hell of a couple of weeks. But this week, hopefully, if all goes according to plan and my prediction goes correct, it should be smooth sailing, because ultimately the Broncos are going to play everybody and they're going to play hard. If there's one thing this team has shown this year, is they have an ability to rebound after disappointment. After the blocked kick against Kansas City, they went out, they won 3 really good games, and they played like hell, right? When they get down, they come back. This team has shown a lot of resilience, and I think that's a reflection of great coaching from Sean Payton and Vance Joseph. We can talk about the scheme that's put on the field all we want. We probably will over the offseason when we talk about coaching and stuff like that. There's plenty to talk about there. But this team has shown a lot of resilience. And after a loss like that against Cincinnati, back against the wall, you need a win. I trust this team to go out there and get it. Everybody's healthy against the Chiefs backups. If they lose, they don't deserve to be a playoff team. I know Carson Wentz, devil magic, but this team knows how to beat bad teams. And Kansas City, Carson Wentz is going to be baited into multiple turnovers. Patrick Surtain interception to seal the Defensive Player of the Year case. That would make my heart sing. Benito is going to scream off the edge against the backup tackles. Jonathan Cooper is going to make plays. Zach Allen is going to be mad about the Pro Bowl snub, and he's going to get up there. And this defense is going to hold Kansas. They held Kansas City starters to 16 last time they played. I don't think the backups are going to get more than that. I believe in the I believe in the offense to go out there and get at least. I think my final score prediction was 28-13. I think they'll get it done.
I think that this is a Denver blowout. I think that the Kansas City offense is going to be essentially a non-starter. I mean, the devil magic thing. It's three things.
I think that's Patrick Mahomes.
It's Mahomes. It's Kelsey chemistry, I would say. Even if Kelsey isn't the same player, he does still have an absolute knack for moving the chains on third down, being in the right place at the right time. And it is Reed's situational play calling and ability to use the talent at his disposal. Mahomes isn't playing. Kelsey isn't playing. And Reed is not going to be showing the good stuff in his playbook, especially because it matters more than ever because Kansas City just isn't as offensively talented. He's saving all of that for the playoffs. Instead, it's Carson Wentz, who is very volatile and very prone to turnovers at this stage of his career, playing behind a backup offensive line that the Chiefs tackles, who do they usually start? Wanye Morris and Juwan Taylor.
They did move Joe Tooney out to left tackle the past couple of games, and it's been looking better.
You're right about that. But then those guys are off the field as well, and you're looking at what is normally a very good Chiefs interior that I think does a lot to camouflage a run game that isn't very explosive. So now these 3, 4, 5-yard runs are going for 1-0, -1 against the Broncos D that has been stout against the run. I think that Kansas City is going to be bad at moving the ball, and I think they're going to turn it over as well. One thing the Broncos have done really well is they've beat up on a lot of bad defenses. I think that they get right back to it. Bo Nix isn't going to be under duress. I think this is a really, really nice game script for Denver, and they have a ton to play for. Lastly, I'm sorry to say this, but I don't think there's any of that divisional, we can't let our rival make the playoffs thing, because I don't think that the Chiefs are scared of the Broncos. I don't think this is you're keeping a Super Bowl contender out of the playoff situation. That's why they're resting their starters. I don't think the Chiefs are going to be playing with a ton of urgency. I've got Broncos 27-10.
I agree. I don't think the Chiefs. I don't think they want the Broncos to make the playoffs. It's not because they're scared of the Broncos. It's just because, listen, Chiefs and Broncos fans don't like each other. The teams don't like each other. All right. They obviously don't want the Broncos to be happy, but ultimately they don't care enough. Right? They don't care that much. If it was the Raiders in this situation, I think the Raiders play their starters because the Broncos and the Raiders hate each other. But the Raiders are never going to be good enough to go 15-1. We know that, all right? unless we're in the prison league, the Raiders are never going 15-1. So the Chiefs don't care that much. I also think the narrative that the Chiefs don't want to see the Bengals in the playoffs, so they're going to bench their starters against the Broncos, I think that's stupid as well. Because if the Chiefs actually do see the Bengals in the playoffs, that means the Bengals beat the Bills. They'd rather play the Bengals than the Bills, guarantee you. So, I don't think there's any of that. I think Kansas City's just resting their starters because they want to be healthy. They've got a lot of older guys. But yeah, Denver's going to be able to run the ball. There was some flashes last week of good running game. Jaleel McLaughlin blanked for a second, ran like 9 yards every single play against Cincinnati in a lot of inside zone concepts. Miners and Powers really had his first game where he looks like he deserved that contract last week. He was opening up holes left and right with Bowles on the left side. So, against a Chris Jones-less Chiefs defense, they're going to be able to move the ball in the run game really well, which when the Broncos run game is going, there's not many teams that can beat them, but their run game's almost never going against good teams. So that's the issue. But yeah, I think this should be a Broncos easy win. Please just go up for it. in the first quarter and don't look back. For my sanity, I just need a 10-win Broncos playoffs appearance, and I'll be happy. I don't care if we lose by 42 to the Bills next week. Just get there. That's all that matters.
This is a 10.5-point Broncos spread, and I personally don't think that goes far enough.
Yeah.
All right, our second best game, and I think our only game that has playoff implications on both sides, or one of the two that has playoff implications on both sides. Saturday night, Bengals sitting at 8-8 against the Steelers. The Steelers clinch the AFC North with a win and a Ravens loss. That's not going to happen. They protect the number 5 seed, though, with a win, so they are going to be playing their starters no matter what happens earlier on. And the Bengals will take the 7 seed with a win and a Dolphins and, God forbid, Broncos loss. My big question is, can the Steelers light up the scoreboard on offense like they did in Week 13 where they won 44-38? I have been really disappointed in what we've seen from Pittsburgh in recent weeks. Was it the Ravens that they went out there and had a bad game against? That didn't surprise me. The Ravens held them in check the first time. The Ravens' red zone defense in particular in that first matchup that the Steelers actually won held up very, very nicely. However, against the Chiefs, that was with George Pickens back and Chris Jones out, and they still only scored 10 points. That is my swing factor, is what version of the Steelers offense do we get? Are they just figured out at this point?
Yeah, and you know what? They put up 14 against Philadelphia a few weeks ago. They put up 17 against Baltimore. They put up 10 against Kansas City, and that's bad. They have not been able to do things. Russell Wilson, it was always going to happen. He was always just going to not regress because he's been playing like this all season. He's just been playing bad defenses and bad teams, but teams are just, they remembered how to beat him now. They figured out. He changed a little bit, but you know what? We sack him. He's going to take a lot of bad sacks. He's going to make mistakes if we give him disguised coverages sometimes. If he doesn't figure out pre-snap, then he's going to make mistakes, but generally does figure it out pre-snap. So the Steelers have a lot of issues offensively, and luckily they're going up against a defense that isn't very good, but I've actually been very impressed with their improvement over the past few weeks. This past month, I wouldn't say they've been number 32 defense in the league, maybe number 27, number 28. And that is a significant improvement, and it may be enough to keep the Steelers' offense in check while your offense goes to work on a Steelers' defense that has been unimpressive, to say the least, against good offenses over the past week. You didn't score any points against all those teams, but you let Philly put up 28 on you. You let Kansas City put up 29. You let Baltimore put up 31. All good offenses, all Cincinnati caliber offenses. And I just worry that Pittsburgh's not going to be able to stop Cincinnati enough. They're not going to be able to get enough points to compete with that Cincinnati offense, and that's why I do have the Bengals winning.
So in a lot of these games, this week is all divisional games. We've seen all of these games played before. You look back to what happened previously, and I don't think that it tells us a ton. Like, I think about Ravens-Browns, where the Browns knocked off the Ravens that was Steelers. Ravens-Browns, where Jameis was playing his first game, and he lit up the scoreboard, and the Ravens turned it over on downs a couple of times, and that's all it took. I don't think we're learning a lot about what this week's Ravens-Browns matchup is going to look like. However, Steelers 44, Bengals 38, I think paints a great picture of what needs to happen. And that's not only does the Steelers offense need to play well, the Bengals offense needs to make mistakes. The reason I don't think the Bengals are definitively the best offense in the NFL, because by points per game, I'm pretty sure they are.
But they're not, though. But points per game, yes, but they're not. I agree.
And they're not, in my opinion, because they can go toe-to-toe with any defense. They're not, say, matchup limited. They make too many mistakes, because when you're asking Joe Burrow to drop back 40 times a game and win with his processing and win with his play extension and win with his ball placement and chemistry with his receivers, you're just going to get strip sacks. You're just going to get tipped up interceptions and the occasional miscommunication. The run game is not reliable. I think I made this joke in the past. Fantasy owners of Chase Brown wouldn't know that, but on a down-to-down basis, you can't trust that run game. You can't always trust the offensive line. They just make 1, 2, 3 too many mistakes in almost all of these games that they've lost that have just barely allowed their opponents to beat them. I do like the Bengals. Last time these teams faced off, Cincinnati was favored. I think the spreads are the exact same. Cincinnati minus 2.5. I picked the Steelers to win last time. But knowing what we know now about the Steelers offense, the Bengals defense has settled down to a point where they're still really bad. They're still going to get absolutely shoved around in this hypothetical scenario where they make the playoffs. But I don't think they're the 32nd best unit in the NFL that seems to actively make whatever offense they're playing better. I think it's enough for Cincinnati to win this one. I have them 28-24.
Yeah, I agree. And a big part of that is Josh Newton has been playing really well for the Bengals in the secondary. He's not been like Pro Bowl or anything, but he's been average, which has been a great improvement. You're going to need Cam Taylor-Britt to do something this week against George Pickens, because you obviously can't put Newton on Pickens, because that's like a 40-pound difference and 5-inch height difference. So obviously we're not going to put Newton on Pickens, so we're going to need something from Taylor-Britt if you're the Bengals. But yeah, like you said, that is the thing with the Bengals. The run game has been inconsistent. Now with Orlando Brown back, though, you hope that you can bring some of that consistency back, because he looked really good against the Broncos last week. He dominated Nick Bonino almost every snap. I think Bonino maybe had one pressure. Jonathan Cooper off the other side, he was beating Mims a fair bit, so Broncos still got a lot of pressure. And Zach Allen, 4 sacks, insane. So the rest of the offensive line is still suspect, but Orlando Brown was really good, especially when they ran to the left. Cody Ford looked a lot better, moving back to his natural position of guard. So Brown and Ford were able to move guys, really, in the run game. But also, Orlando Brown is still playing on a fucking broken leg. That's insane. He's playing on a broken leg, legitimately. His leg is still broken. He's playing. So that's not reliable. Especially when you're going up against TJ Watt. You know, he's had his fair share of issues this season, but he's still TJ Watt. He can turn it on any game you want. And then you got Highsmith. I think he's playing in this one, right?
Yes. Yeah, Highsmith is back.
So Highsmith is back. He's going to torment Amarius Mims, but Burrow's really good at beating pressure. He'll get hit, doesn't matter. He's going to put it on the money. And my matchup to watch is going to be T. Higgins versus Dante Jackson, because we saw, Jamar Chase is going to get his on Joey Porter Jr. Joey Porter Jr. has been good this year. Well, okay, he's been not great, but that's because he's been playing the best receivers in football every other week, and they're asking a lot of him. We know what we're going to get from Chase. He's probably going to put up 9 for like 135 and a touchdown or 2. But because Porter's good, and he's going to get some wins, but Chase is going to win more often than not. Porter won't allow him to go for like 266 or anything. I don't think that'll happen. But Higgins, he destroyed Riley Moss last week. Dante Jackson has been getting a lot of easy assignments with Pittsburgh. This is his most difficult challenge of the year, because I don't think Higgins was playing in the last Pittsburgh-Cincinnati matchup. Was he? Do you remember?
Oh, he might have been back. But if he was back, I think he was hobbled.
I think that was the game where I think that was his first game back, and he was not playing like himself. Higgins looked unstoppable last week. I don't know if Dante Jackson can handle that, and if you have 2 receivers dominating on both sides of the field, that's just so hard to overcome. And you can have Minka bracket to one of them, while the other's going off too. So it gives Cincinnati a lot more options than they usually have. If Pittsburgh can turn the ball, if Pittsburgh can force the mistakes, if they can win the turnover battle, I think that's the path to victory. But with Russell Wilson playing how he is, I think it's going to be hard to win the turnover battle. Strip sacks, bad interceptions. We've seen it all over the past few weeks. I think he might lose this game for him. And if I had to put it in the hands of one quarterback, I'm taking Joe Burrow 99 out of 98 times. So give me the Bengals 23-20. But I think it'll be close.
Before we move on, Joey Porter Jr., over 2.5 holding calls.
I'm going to go under, but I'm going to go over on holding and pass interference.
Gotcha. That makes sense. All right. And with that out of the way, moving on to what I can only assume, because you didn't chime out at any other point, is your game of the week. 14-2 Vikings against the 14-2 Lions to decide the number 1 seed in the NFC. Was that your game of the week, or was it something else?
I think the game that has the most regular combined wins of all time, any game in NFL history, I think that's going to be my game of the week to decide the division and the number 1 seed. I think that's probably the best game we've got this week.
That was my game of the week too. Here's something that I think is kind of interesting. Take a shot at what you think the spread is for this game, because it surprised me a little bit.
Where is this? This is in Detroit.
It's in Detroit.
I still think Minnesota's probably going to be favored by a point.
Detroit by a full field goal.
Really? That's surprising.
It really surprised me because I had second thoughts because, again, they are on the road. Detroit is obviously extremely hungry, and they are a true offensive juggernaut, even with David Montgomery out. But, man, I think the Vikings are in a perfect situation to have a dominant offensive day. The Vikings pass catchers, the Lions just aren't going to have any answers for them. The Lions struggled against the 49ers. There was a few unforced mistakes from Brock Purdy that were ultimately the difference in that game. Now, if the Lions can get home, if they can get pressure, there's a world where, say, you get a Kirby Joseph deep interception. That's my matchup, is actually Sam Darnold versus Kirby Joseph. And I'm looking out for a big Zadarius Smith game. But if not, and this is not a Detroit defensive line that without Hutchinson and Aleem McNeil has been excellent at generating pressure, I think the Vikings could put up 6, 7 touchdowns. I'm not going to take that off the table. They're going to have a run game. They're going to have an excellent passing attack. And I don't think it's a guarantee that they turn the ball over.
I agree. Listen, I kind of hoped you'd pick the Lions because I picked the Vikings. So I hope we have the discussion. But no, I think we see this game the same way. These are two incredible teams. This is going to be must-watch TV. This is, again, I'm looking forward to this game so much because you just got so many of the best players and the best coaches on the field at the same time. The first game was absolutely amazing, and I think this game will be too. But I do have the Vikings 35-31, and ultimately it is a factor of all of these units have been so good this year, but the Lions' defense is just a little too hurt for me to pick them. That McNeil loss, Hutchinson loss obviously hurt, but they were okay without him. Without McNeil, that was the last straw for them. Zadarius Smith, we're at the point in his arc with a team where he's stopped trying and he's just not very good anymore. He's not really generating much pressure over the past few weeks. Hopefully he can do some more in this big of a game. Maybe he'll lock in, put up a big game, but I don't see that happening. Ultimately, how Detroit won the last game was that they limited the mistakes. They forced a big Sam Darnold pick. They ran the ball well. I think Sam Darnold's improved since that game. I think he'll be under less pressure. Though that game, they had Darisaw then. So we'll see. We'll see if it'll be different without Darisaw this time. But I think Darnold will be under less pressure. I think he'll be able to have more time in the pocket to hit his guys. Jefferson is going to have a day because last time you had Davis and Arnold to deal with Jefferson and Addison, but this time you're with Arnold and Amik Robertson, and that's significantly worse, and that worries me. So I think the Vikings offense is going to get whatever they want, really, because just Kevin O'Connell is going to he's going to want to win this one, In Detroit, they'll do a lot offensively. I still think they're going to score 31 points, but I believe in this Vikings defense to stifle them, make Jared Goff uncomfortable, because how you beat Detroit is you force turnovers. If you force a Jared Goff mistake, you force one bad Jared Goff mistake, you've got a chance. Or you score 48 points like Buffalo did. You've got two options. And since I don't think Minnesota's going to score 48 points, I think we're going to need a couple sacks. I think we're going to see some blitzing from Blake Cashman and Ivan Pace. And ultimately, I just like Minnesota a little bit more.
So before I touch on the Lions' offensive matchups a little bit, I basically got you on Jeopardy, but I got another quiz question.
All right.
What percentage of Zadarius Smith's tackles, because you talked about him maybe being a little bit checked out, do you think he's missed this season?
He's never been the best tackler, but
nope.
There's just no 20 would be egregious, but I'm going to say 18.
20 would be pretty bad. It would be crazy if he was over that. 54.5%.
Oh my god! Oh my god! What?
It's bad.
I didn't know it was that bad. 54. I didn't know it was that bad. Honestly, I figured it would be over 20, but I thought it would be maybe 30 at most. Holy shit! 54. Yeah. For a defense, for an edge? Oh, boy.
He is checked out, I think. He's been very vocal about how he doesn't want to play run defense downs. My question is, can he check back in for this game? So you can kind of say that that's a swing factor. Now, for the Vikings defense against the Lions offense, I really think you hit it on the head. The Lions are very obviously going to move the football and score touchdowns. This Brian Flores defense is exceptional, but I do think when you get into the upper stratosphere of offenses and the upper stratosphere of defenses, since defenses are reactive and offenses dictate, I think that the offense comes out on top more often than it doesn't. So I think the Lions are going to be just fine. I have the Vikings winning 35-34, but it's truly the path of least resistance for the Vikings to win this game. I mean, what's more likely, an offense that's looked well oiled for the last 5 to 6 weeks, has been dropping huge numbers, that has exceptional offensive talent, beats up on a really, really poor defense that's struggled and is, can absolutely be exposed, or a really good offense doesn't make any mistakes against a really good defense. I think things are going to be easy, or easier for the Vikings, I should say. They're on the road. Detroit's hungry. We know how good Detroit is. They're going to be in it. But I think the Vikes have an advantage. And I don't love it. I wish the Packers were playing for this spot. 14-2 versus 14-2. NFC North, best division in the history of football. I've got the Vikings in the best game of the season, last game of the season. It's going to be pretty sweet.
Oh, it's going to be so fun. I really like what you said about how offenses dictate and defenses are reactive, because I think that's been definitive of what Brian Flores has tried to do this season. He's tried to make his defense dictate what the offense is doing. And more often than not, most of the time it works, and that's how this defense has been so dominant, because they are telling the offense what to do because they have done whatever they want. But when they've played the elite offenses, more specifically the elite offensive lines, though not in the Rams case, which that was just, as we said earlier, that was a fluky game. When they've played the elite offenses like they did in their one of two losses against Detroit, that defense has struggled because they have to be more reactive. They can't dictate against that Detroit offensive line. They can't dictate the game against Ben Johnson. He's going to do what he wants to do, and I think that's Detroit's path to victory. You control the game. You control the pace of the game. If you look at how Detroit won in the run game last time, it actually wasn't a big David Montgomery game. He only ran the ball 7 times. Gibbs went 15 for 116 and a touchdown. So that was a big Gibbs game. You give Gibbs the ball 15, 20 times again, you dictate control of the game. You control the time of possession. That gives Minnesota less time to make the big plays. That gives Minnesota less time to gash you. You control the game, and you just limit the mistakes, and you trust your defense. You trust Aaron Glenn to call a great game. He's a head coaching candidate this year. Winning this game with that defense would be a hell of an interview. So he's going to want this, and you hope that Sam Darnold puts out a classic Sam Darnold game. That's the path to victory. You control the game, you let your defense force a mistake from Sam Darnold, and you just get up early and stay in the driver's seat.
I think we see this game almost exactly the same. I've got one final question for you. If Jared Goff did throw one badly timed pick and it made the difference, who on the Vikings is intercepting that pass?
Ooh, I like that. Listen, just because I think no, I think here's the script. NFC Conference Championship, they meet. I think Harrison Smith makes the pick because it's his last ever NFC game. He's probably going to retire after the season if we had to guess. Maybe he plays another. But in this one, I think it would be Blake Cashman. Man, I'm a Blake Cashman guy. He's been so good this season. I believe he got the Pro Bowl nod. I think he did. I think he makes the pick. I think he baits Jared Goff with his eyes. He fakes a blitz, and he drops back into coverage. Jared Goff's looking for Amon-Ra St. Brown over the middle. Cashman gets a hand on it, takes it the other way.
I love it. I had Byron Murphy on Amon-Ra St. Brown making that play.
Mm-hmm. The only worry I have about this game for Minnesota, the one area which they'll be weak, you cannot have Josh Metellus in one-on-one coverage against Amon-Ra St. Brown at any point in the game, or else it will be a touchdown like it was last game when they were one-on-one.
That could almost be a strategy. Like if you want the ball back, you just stick Metellus on Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yes.
You get the defense off the field, get rested up.
You're down 3 with 30 seconds to go. You have no timeouts left, but they can just kneel it out. But they see Amon-Ra is on Josh McDaniels 1-on-1. Let's just throw it to him. He scores in 15. He scores. You score a touchdown. You go on an onside kick. You go for a Hail Mary. You score a touchdown again. You win because Ben Johnson could not resist the 1-on-1 with Amon-Ra and Josh McDaniels.
These are the takes that people listen to an hour and 50-minute long podcast about meaningless Week 18 games.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
I think it was a hell of a show to end the regular season. I forgot to write any outro script. So, Victor, do you have any other exceptional football takes?
Well, no. Listen, do you know what your record is in the season this year? Because I think we'll compare records, and I think the winner will get some sort of prize when we do maybe we do like an off-season fantasy draft or something. Maybe we create expansion teams, or we do mock drafts, and the winner of the record gets the first overall pick or something like that.
I do have my record tracked in a spreadsheet, which I'm opening up right now. However, I didn't pick week 1, and there was 1 week during midterms that I did not pick.
Okay, so I think we'll just go winning percentage then. We'll go percentage.
I was very strong last week, and it bumped me up to 150 and 75 straight up on the season without those 2 weeks.
That's 0.66 then.
Yes.
On the dot. I am at. Go away. I am okay. So you're at 0.66 on the season. I have 173 and 83, which puts me at 0.675 on the season.
Woo-hoo!
I have I have less than a 1% lead on you. That can easily change over this game, because we did pick different games. So if your picks go right and mine go wrong, I think you take it. So okay, wow. Listen, this is what you come to see.
One side note that I think is fun is weeks 2, 3, 4, and 5. This, I think, tells you how much we truly learn about NFL teams throughout the year. I don't remember what the actual record is, but I was 500 for 4 weeks. And week 6 plus 119.44, 73% winning percentage. You truly learn a lot about teams throughout the season, and I think it helps that there's less parity this year. The bad teams are bad, and the good teams are very solid. Like, I have to remind myself, it's not normal to have 12 teams that are in contention for worst team in the NFL.
You know what's insane is I actually went below 500 in weeks 2 through 5. I was 29 and 33.
Oh, wow. And
yeah.
You've surged back since then.
I have gone 14 and 2 twice in the last 3 weeks.
Twice in the last 3. Wow.
Yeah.
I was 15 and 1 last week, and
I would have been 15. I would have
6 the week before.
I was actually 10 and 6 the week before too. I would have been 15 and 1 last week if I did. I think we had the same exact picks, except I picked the Browns upset over the Dolphins, and that obviously did not work out.
Did you switch Saints on the day of?
No, I had the Saints. That must have been my 2 losses then. Hold on. I'm pretty sure I didn't switch it. Maybe I did at the last second. Let me see. I was thinking of never mind. I went 14 and 2 in week 13 and week 15. I went 12 and 4 last week. No, I did not. I 12 and 4, 10 and 6, 14 and 2, 10 and 4, 14 and 2. I mean, I've been on a heater. We both have, because this is where real ball knowers though. So
tune into the show next week, folks. See who takes the regular season crown.
We will reveal the regular season percentage winner, and you're going to get some absolutely fantastic playoff predictions. I'm very excited for the playoffs. I think this is the most excited I've been for the playoffs in a long time.
It's going to be a ton of fun. And remember, the playoff prediction record, that's what actually matters. It's like that we're looking for a ring, all right? The regular season doesn't matter. It's been a great show. We'll see you guys next week. Victor, you got anything else after that excellent winning percentage conversation? We're real football sabermetricians.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, you guys enjoy the last week of the season. If you're a fan of a team that's just on the brink trying to get over the playoffs, I wish you the worst of luck because you're most likely a Dolphins or a Bengals fan. I really hope your team loses this week. I really hope they don't get in the playoffs. But if you're a Broncos fan, hope you all do. And you know what? We'll recognize you. We're rooting for a Commanders loss and a Packers win this week. All right, so the Packers get to play the Bucs instead of the Eagles. That would be nice. So that's what we're rooting for. If you want the Balls Talk Sports rooting guide, we want a Broncos win, a Commanders loss, and a Packers win.
Ladies and gentlemen, as always, fuck the Raiders, and also stay hard.